professional speaker, owner and director of the Spiral Heart Healing Centre. Leslie studied psychology, sociology and French at Glasgow University. 2014 to 2019, Leslie?
Yeah.
And Leslie's topic today is, whose talk are you walking?
Make your mark.
Incorrect information passed on. Making your mark. Leslie, could everyone mute themselves, please?
ASDF, semicolon LKJ. 270 digits, striking out the litany. You will be a secretary. The tinny thwack, 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 percussively tattooing this mark on 30 children's minds. The summer of 71, in a porter cabin, in a school, hot and stifling. It seemed in my 11th year I had been waiting for something a long, long time. And now it was bubbling to the surface. No. The word galvanized me. I took out the piece of paper I had been writing those ASDFs on. And I in turn put a new tabula rasa, a new potential of A4 blank waiting to be marked. The gargantuan machine swallowed it up quite happily as I began to write. Dear sir, I would like to work in yours. Oh, a teacher-shaped shadow cast itself across the typewriter in front of me. There was one last thwack that disturbed a noticeable deathly silence. And my world came to a full stop. She was behind me, Genghis Khan in a tweed suit and pearls. A tweeded coated arm shot past my shoulder, the talons a red splurge as she ripped the paper from the machine, turned on her stilettos and clickety-clacked out of the room, the evidence of my defiance in her hand. Everyone waited, breath bated. For 29 of them, there was a gleeful expectation of a belting. I just waited. After what seemed like forever, but still far too soon, she called my name. And I walked slowly, rubbing my hands against my school skirt to meet my fate. She made a mark that day, but not the mark that everyone was expecting. I walked into a situation that was totally different to the one that I had expected, that everyone in that room had expected. As I crossed the threshold of her office, I noticed that the belt still hung on the back of the wall. This was my first indication that things were slightly different. She had just been putting the phone on its cradle, the receiver of a Bakelite, one of the very old-fashioned, but still working at that time, phones. She looked up at me and she said, "Are you serious about this?" No berating, no shouting, no how dare yous. What was going on? I decided that the best policy was honesty. If I was going to be punished, then I might as well be punished for something rather than nothing. Yes, I don't want to be a secretary. I don't want to be working indoors. I want to work with animals. Good, she says. Ah, what's going on? What's happening here? My sister's had this woman for secretarial. She's renowned for belting people and for being in a very bad mood all the time. I've got you an interview on Sunday morning at 11 o'clock at the zoo. Don't let me down. I had gone on her reputation. I had gone only on what I knew from what people had told me, because this was my first day in that classroom. For a long time, I didn't realize what was going on. Through my life, I remember this woman. I remember that moment as the significant mark that changed the course of my life. At one point, I actually got to find out why she did it. It turned out, and she swore me to secrecy, that when she was my age, she had wanted to work with animals too, but her parents wouldn't let her. It wasn't a good, clean job. And this echoed my own mother's statements. Secretarial work, good, clean job. You won't have it very long. You'll meet a man, get married, and that'll be it. That's all you need to know. That was a mark I was starting to rub out very, very quickly, the idea that I was going to do that. We make decisions and we make marks very easily. We say things off the cuff. We don't realize what we're saying and how we're doing it, what consequences they will have. So I'm asking you to think when you're talking to people, who else might be listening in the room? Because something that you say might go deep, like a dandelion taproot, into someone's psyche and wait for an explosive no one day, or perhaps change their life entirely in other ways. Words have power, and we are responsible for the words that we use, especially in business and in education. Genghis became one of my favorite teachers, although we didn't tell anybody at all, because that would ruin her reputation and take away some of her power. From where I went that day, and even she handled my mother for me, that was another mark that had been made by a teacher. My mother had been told by a head teacher not to worry about the fact that Leslie can't count. By the time she leaves school, the machines, the tills will be doing the work for her. They'll tell her what change to give. So not to worry, she'll be able to actually work in a supermarket. But of course, once I got up to secondary school, that mark had become a pustule that I didn't like at all. And that was what was waiting to burst that day. And because I made that action through someone else's mark, making a mark on me, a teacher who had always wanted to do something gave a gift that she could never perceive or conceive how it would turn out. From there, I became a vet nurse after working at the zoo until I was 16 years old. I went to Glasgow College of Technology, which is now Caledonia Uni, and worked there as an animal technician. And from there, I went to Glasgow University Vet School, which took me all the way to Monaco with just one action and one reaction. I've been in life honored to understand some of the marks that I've made on people, because I've met them afterwards in spaces where I look at their face and I say, I know your face. I can't quite place where I know you from. One particular person said to me, well, we met in Brittany and we were having a chat about what you do. And that's why I'm here, because something that you said made me want to know more. And that was an extreme honor. On the other hand, though, I have a goddaughter who berated me at one point for getting married. She said, you told me never to get married. Never ever do it because it wasn't worth it. I said, I told you? She said, well, you were talking to Mum about it. Why did you get married? Because I wanted to, and it seemed like a good idea at the time. What made you think that you should not get married? Well, you said, and I always listen to what you say. Oh dear. Then perhaps we need to readdress that. And I'll tell you what it is about being responsible for your own feelings and not listening all the time so hard to the things that people are saying because they're just having a moan or they're venting. As we walk along the world and we see things and we do things, we're taking all this in. We're understanding different things, but we're also understanding it from our own marks that have been made upon us, either from our parents, our grandparents, that we've inherited, or marks that we translate because we're feeling insecure about something, or we're in a sort of fugue state, fearful of being caught out, having imposter syndrome, because somebody once said, who do you think you are? And there's always somebody who's going to say something like that, because they really want to know who you think that you are, just so they can be sure who they are. I often put myself in a position where I think back to the different things that have happened to me in my life. And I can always go back to that teacher in school on one day when I decided to say no, when I decided to change my mind and go up against the mindset of my parent, who was only going on the mindset of a cultural idea of what a girl should be looking for, should be looking at, how to be, how to act, what to expect. As we walk along in life, we have choices, but the choices that we make are peppered with the ideas of others. We have only them to guide us until we step out on our own. And some of us will never do that. Some of us will toe the line. Some of us will stay in that groove and wonder what it might have been like to do something differently. It's never too late to remark a mark, to remake it, to change it, to look after it and say, you know what? I thought a long time ago that I could do this. And then life kind of got in the way. I had to do this, or I had to do that. I had to do something else. Perhaps now I can do it. Which is why I went to university in my 50s. because the mark that was made on me was, you can't count, you're stupid. You're good for nothing, really. Actually, what had happened was the way of teaching dyscalculia hadn't been invented yet. So when I got to actually doing psychology in Glasgow, which was very statistics heavy, I can pick them. I had to go and get some extra tuition. And I was standing there with a Chinese PhD student wondering if we were having a communication problem when he said to me, "What is it you need to do?" And I showed him an equation. I said, "This, I can't do this." "Yes, you can," he said. No, I can't." "Yes, you can." And I thought, what's going on? Doesn't he understand me? I'm feeling the same as I did a long time ago. There's something not quite right here. And then the bubble burst again. And I said, "I don't understand this language." And the mark was wiped. Because I love language. And I'm good at language. And basically, that was all. I needed to say, this is a language and I can learn it. So making our mark is something that happens every day. We set our mind to an idea. We mark it down and we mark it well. I'm wondering what marks have been made in your life and where they took you. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Very interesting. Do we have questions for Leslie? Sandy?
No.
Anyone have any questions for Leslie? John?
See me, I can't see the gallery yet.
John,
Yes,
do you
thank
have a
you.
question for Leslie?
I do. Roughly how many marks have you had in your own life, and what were the most significant changes?
I think the most significant changes, that mark wasn't the first one, but it was perhaps the most significant one in changing the way that my life went on. When I was 5, I was adopted into my own family, and my mother suddenly became my sister. And I didn't realize that mark had been made because it was suppressed. I only found out about it a lot later, and that's when it became a mark that I had to look at and say, what am I going to do with this? Because does that mean that I don't know who I am? And then I suddenly realized that, yes, I do know who I am. I'm me. And it doesn't matter about whether or not the title was mother or sister. She's still in my life, which is good. There's someone to talk to. So understanding that and knowing that what it is the other thing that I talk about, whose talk are you walking, that Carol mentioned earlier on. It's got to do with whether or not we're telling the same story, and it's about story. And with every story, there are little plot deviations and little bits that are put in, and basically that's our way in life. We don't always notice them at the time, but when we look back, there's the mark of someone saying, oh, I expect you're going to be a nurse or a policewoman or a shopkeeper or a secretary because you're a girl. I made a mark on that guy who was a careers teacher by saying, no, I want to go to work in Chipperfield Circus, get my horse master certificate and work with elephants. And he didn't know what to do with that because he'd never heard that before. So again, there's something in each one of us that has this ability to either take the mark and live with it, or look at it and say, what do I want to do with you? Am I going to get some existential vanish and get you out of here and then walk forwards and find out what's going on? And I think that at each stage that we have in life, we can actually go forward. It doesn't matter how old we are or how young we are. It becomes a catalytic conversion. And with each mark that is made, you change, the catalyst changes as well as changing the other person or the other thing. It's not a one-time deal. We evolve, we change as we age, as we grow. Sometimes we don't allow our minds to grow with us. Sometimes we get stuck. But when we open up to the idea that we can change that, then we can see the marks. Then we can understand. Oh, hang on a minute. I know you. Oh, yeah, I've met you before. Do you know, you said to me this thing, and I decided to go and do that. Or there are so many kids at the moment watching David Attenborough, and he's making a really big mark on the climate, on environment, on working with animals and understanding that they need to have their habitats and what they can do for us. I've always worked with animals. One of the biggest marks was I don't like people very much. They were scary. They told lies. They didn't tell the truth. Animals, you knew exactly what was going to happen. If they didn't like you, you knew about it right away. And then I got a dog. It's an occupational hazard as a vet nurse. You end up with animals. Dogs you have to take out for walks. So I had to talk to people outside of work. And that got me into another situation. And that was another big change. And then I left my job as a vet nurse. I got injured and I couldn't do it anymore. But by that time, I was learning things like NLP and hypnosis and understanding different ways of using therapies. And then one of the biggest marks in the last few years, I got cancer. And I had to understand how to get my brain working again after chemo. And that was when I started looking at psychology. And having lived in Monaco for 5 years, because that's where my veterinary nursing took me, that was my pinnacle, really. I had learned French and I wanted to keep it up. So I did French too. So the marks keep coming and I keep welcoming them because I want to know what's going to happen next.
Fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Does anyone else have any questions for Leslie?
Mark,
No. Mark?
no, that's okay. I think that's the last. I was simply going to ask, what was it like returning to university at 50 as I did? But I don't think that's a proper question.
Oh, I don't know. It was a mark in itself, Mark, because basically all these children, my goodness.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how old I was.
That's right.
Until there were all these kids and they all knew how to do things more than I did. They had been taught differently. And it was a whole learning experience. It was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Leslie. I'd like to pass the vote of thanks on to our own Andy May.
Thanks, President Carroll. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I pressed the right button. Okay. It's my privilege today to give the vote of thanks on behalf of my fellow Rotarians to you, Leslie. We are most grateful for your positive thoughts presentation, and I think you have really left your mark on us. It was deep and insightful into our historic lives, thoughts and actions. Genghis and you have provoked us to think how we engage, handle our friends, our family, and our actions in our past in a little depth, that we maybe used the carrot or stick method, and now hopefully and probably we've changed to praise, praise, and even more praise. And even if you haven't, as Leslie says, it's never too late. Can I say a big thank you? And can we show our thanks in the usual way?